Welcome back to Crime Chronicles. Today we take a look at the lives and boxing abilities of two legendary UK hardmen from days gone by. These men came up in a place and time when being a bit tasty with your fists could open up career options that might not exactly be legal. Both of these men are acknowledged as being handy with their fists, and although they never met in the ring or on the cobbles, we are asking the question, who would win if Lee Duffy had faced off with Lenny McLean? Lenny McLean, known as the Governor, was a legendary figure in the world of unlicensed boxing and a notorious personality in the London underworld. Born on April the 9th of 1949 in Hoxton, in London's East End, McLean's life was marked by hardship, violence, and a relentless drive to be the best in whatever he did. His journey from a troubled childhood to becoming one of the most feared bare-knuckle fighters in Britain is a story of raw determination and survival. McLean's early life was difficult. His father passed away when Lenny was only 4 years old, leaving his mother, Rose, to raise him and his siblings alone. Rose soon remarried, but Lenny's stepfather was abusive, subjecting him to severe physical punishment. This abusive environment hardened Lenny and instilled in him a fierce sense of self-reliance and toughness from a young age. Lenny's formal education was minimal, and he left school at 15 and became involved in petty crime. His early brushes with the law and frequent street fights earned him a reputation as a formidable brawler. By his late teens, Lenny had served time in various youth detention centres, where he continued to hone his fighting skills. McLean's entry into the world of unlicensed boxing came in the early 1970s. Unlicensed boxing, also known as no-rules boxing, was a brutal sport that existed outside the regulations of the British Boxing Board of Control. Lenny McLean quickly rose to prominence in this underground scene due to his incredible physical strength, fearlessness, and ruthless fighting style. Standing 6 feet 3 inches tall and weighing around 280 pounds, McLean was an imposing figure. His fists were like sledgehammers, and he developed a reputation for knocking out opponents with a single punch. Despite his lack of formal training, McLean possessed an innate understanding of combat. His fights were characterized by his powerful punches, iron chin, and unyielding determination. He fought in over 3,000 bouts, claiming victory in the vast majority. McLean's opponents included some of the toughest men in Britain, and his victories cemented his status as the governor of the unlicensed boxing world. One of the most famous episodes in McLean's boxing career was his rivalry with Roy "Pretty Boy" Shaw, another feared figure in the unlicensed boxing scene. Shaw was a skilled fighter with a background in traditional boxing and martial arts, and their clashes became legendary in the annals of British fighting law. Their first encounter in 1978 saw Shaw defeat McLean, but the defeat only fueled McLean's resolve. In a highly anticipated rematch, McLean emerged victorious, knocking out Shaw in the first round. The rivalry culminated in a third fight, where McLean once again triumphed, solidifying his reputation as the toughest man in unlicensed boxing. Outside the ring, Lenny McLean's life was equally eventful. He worked as a bouncer in some of London's most notorious clubs and pubs, where his reputation as a fearsome enforcer grew. His exploits as a bouncer became the stuff of legend, with stories of him single-handedly taking on gangs and unruly patrons. McLean also dabbled in acting, playing roles that capitalized on his tough guy image. His most notable role was in the 1998 film Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, directed by Guy Ritchie. In the film, McLean played the character Barry the Baptist, a ruthless enforcer, which brought him a new level of fame and recognition. In the 1990s, McLean's health began to deteriorate, and he was diagnosed with lung cancer. Despite his illness, McLean remained active in the boxing community and continued to make public appearances. He published his autobiography, The Governor, in 1998, which became a bestseller and further cemented his legendary status. Lenny McLean passed away on July 28th of 1998 at the age of 49. His death marked the end of an era in the world of unlicensed boxing, but his legacy as one of the toughest and most formidable fighters in British history lives on. His life story is a testament to the power of resilience, and the spirit of a man who rose from the streets to become a legend. McLean's influence extends beyond the boxing ring. He remains a cultural icon, symbolising the gritty, unyielding spirit of London's East End. Lee Duffy was born on July the 3rd of 1965 in South Bank, Middlesbrough. He's remembered as one of the most notorious figures in the world of unlicensed boxing and the criminal underworld of the northeast of England. His life, though tragically short, was marked by a mix of raw athletic talent, street fighting prowess, and a tumultuous existence that made him both feared and admired in equal measure. Lee grew up in a tough environment where physical strength and fighting ability were often essential for survival. From an early age, he was exposed to violence and crime, which would shape much of his later life. Middlesbrough in the 1970s and 1980s was a place of economic hardship and social unrest, and young men like Duffy often found themselves caught up in the rough and tumble of street life. Duffy's early years were marred by frequent skirmishes with the law. He was known for his involvement in street fights and petty crime, which eventually escalated to more serious offences. Despite his rough exterior and criminal activities, Duffy harboured a deep interest in boxing. His physicality and natural fighting instincts made him a formidable opponent, even without formal training. Duffy's entry into the world of unlicensed boxing was marked by his exceptional ability to absorb and dish out punishment. Standing at around 6 feet 2 inches tall and weighing approximately 220 pounds, Duffy possessed an imposing physique. His fights were characterized by his sheer physical power, relentless aggression, and an almost uncanny ability to withstand severe blows. He quickly earned a reputation as a fierce and relentless fighter. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Duffy's style was not polished or technically refined. Instead, it was his brute strength, ferocity, and street fighting experience that made him stand out. His ability to intimidate and overpower opponents became his trademark, earning him both respect and fear in the unlicensed boxing circuits. One of the most notable aspects of Lee Duffy's fighting career was his numerous street fights and rivalries. These were not confined to the ring, but extended to the streets, nightclubs, and pubs of Middlesbrough and beyond. Duffy's fearsome reputation meant that many of these encounters became the stuff of local legend. His rivalry with Viv Graham, another well-known hardman from the northeast, is particularly famous. The two were often compared due to their similar backgrounds and reputations, and although a formal fight between them never materialized, their ongoing feud added to the mythos surrounding both men. Duffy's confrontations with various criminal elements in the region further cemented his status as a dominant and fearless figure. Outside the ring, Lee Duffy's life was plagued by criminal activities and violent encounters. He was deeply involved in the criminal underworld, engaging in activities ranging from protection rackets to drug dealing. His intimidating presence and willingness to use violence made him a prominent figure in the local underworld. Duffy's criminal lifestyle inevitably led to numerous run-ins with law enforcement. He spent time in prison for various offences, and his notoriety only grew with each arrest and subsequent release. His life was a cycle of violent confrontations, legal troubles, and brief periods of relative calm before the next storm. Lee Duffy's life came to a violent and tragic end on August 25th of 1991, when he was fatally stabbed during a street fight. He was only 26. Despite his criminal activities and violent nature, Duffy's legacy in the world of unlicensed boxing and street fighting remains significant. He is remembered as a symbol of raw power and unbridled aggression, a man who lived and died by the sword. His life story has been the subject of books, documentaries, and countless anecdotes, ensuring that his legend lives on. Both Lenny McLean and Lee Duffy came up from the streets and made names for themselves with their fists. In their prime, they were similar in height and weight, and both had fearsome reputations gained from many fights. Many people think of Lenny McLean as the lovable rogue we see on screen, but he came from the criminal underworld and could be brutal. Lee Duffy is seen by some as helping to clean up the nightlife in the northeast UK, taxing drug dealers when he worked as a bouncer, but he also had a reputation as being a bully. So our question still stands. If Lenny and Lee had fought in their prime, who would have been the winner? We'd love to read your comments. Thank you for joining us on Crime Chronicles today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel with your friends.